The Los Angeles County Courthouse hummed with a restless energy, its air heavy with anticipation and the faint scent of polished wood. Rows of spectators craned their necks, their whispers a low buzz, as 19-year-old Marcus Tate stood at the defendant's table. Small, black, and unflinching. Accused of grand theft auto and resisting arrest, he faced charges that could bury him. Above, Judge Malcolm Hargrove lounged in his high-backed chair, peering over his glasses with a smirk that said he'd seen this story before. Another kid, another guilty plea. His fingers tapped lazily on the desk, as if counting down to a foregone conclusion. But Marcus wasn't trembling. His hands rested in his pockets, his chin tilted just enough to defy the weight of the room. To Hargrove, he was a statistic. To the prosecutor, a win. Yet something simmered in Marcus's steady gaze, a spark the judge couldn't place. The gallery murmured louder as Victor Langston, the prosecutor, rose, his suit sharp as his confidence, ready to seal Marcus's fate. Hargrove leaned back, drawling. "Let's keep this short, gentlemen. I've got tea time at 2. A ripple of chuckles broke the tension, but Marcus didn't crack a smile. He'd spent years preparing. Not for this exact moment, but for something like it. His mother, Lorraine Tate, a paralegal, had taught him the game behind the gavel. And today, Marcus wasn't just playing. He was rewriting the rules. The courtroom settled into a taut hush as Victor Langston strode forward, his polished shoes clicking against the tile like a metronome marking Marcus Tate's doom. He adjusted his tie, a crisp red slash against his gray suit, and flashed a practiced smile at the jury. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice smooth and commanding. "The state will prove, beyond any doubt, that Marcus Tate is guilty of grand theft auto and resisting arrest." He paused, letting the words sink in, his eyes sweeping the gallery. "This isn't a complicated story. It's a simple one. A stolen car, a chase, a suspect caught red-handed." Judge Malcolm Hargrove nodded faintly, his smirk still lingering as he flipped open the case file. The spectators leaned in, hungry for the drama. Marcus stood still, hands in his pockets, his face a mask of calm. Langston turned to the jury, holding up a glossy photo of a sleek 2022 Audi A6. This vehicle was reported stolen from a gas station on Figueroa Street. Hours later, Los Angeles Police Department officers spotted it tearing through downtown. The driver, Marcus Tate, led them on a reckless pursuit before abandoning the car and fleeing on foot. Langston's tone sharpened. His fingerprints were on the steering wheel. His flight from justice speaks volumes. This isn't a misunderstanding, it's a crime. He set the photo down and called his first witness. The state calls Officer Daniel Kendrick. A broad-shouldered man in a crisp uniform took the stand, his badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Langston approached, all business. "Officer Kendrick, tell us what happened that night." Kendrick straightened, his voice gruff. "I was on patrol near 3rd Street when I saw the Audi speeding past. I pursued it with my partner. The suspect, Marcus Tate, bailed out near an alley and ran. I caught him 3 blocks away, resisting as we took him down." Langston nodded, satisfied. "And you saw him driving the vehicle?" "Yes, sir," Kendrick said firmly, clear as day. The gallery buzzed. A woman in the back whispered, "That's it then." Langston turned to Marcus for the first time, his gaze cold. "No further questions, Your Honor." Hargrove glanced at Marcus's public defender, Ellen Carver, a young woman with a pinched expression and a stack of untouched notes. "Cross-examination, counselor?" Then half rose, her voice shaky. No questions at this time, Your Honor." She sat back down, avoiding Marcus's eyes. The judge snorted softly, amused. Langston's lips twitched upward as he returned to his table. The case felt airtight. Until Marcus shifted, just slightly, his posture loosening, like a coiled spring unwinding. Langston wasn't done. He called a forensic tech next, a wiry man named Paul Hensley, who testified about the fingerprints. "We lifted multiple prints from the steering wheel," Hensley said, holding up a chart. "They match Marcus Tate's, taken at booking, no question." The jury murmured, heads nodding. Langston paced, his voice rising. "Let's be clear. The defense might spin some tale about coincidence or bad luck, but ask yourselves, why run? Why resist? Innocent people don't act like this." He pointed at Marcus, his finger steady. That man stole a car, endangered lives, and thought he could outrun the law. He was wrong. The tension thickened, pressing against the walls. Hargrove leaned forward, resting his chin on his hand, his eyes flicking to Marcus. "Anything to add, counselor?" he asked Ellen, his tone dripping with impatience. Before she could stammer a reply, Marcus placed a hand on her arm. His voice cut through the room, low and steady. "Your Honor, I'll be handling my own defense from here." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Ellen froze, then sank back into her seat. Hargrove blinked, caught off guard, his smirk faltering. "Excuse me?" Marcus met his stare. "I'm representing myself, Your Honor." Langston let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. "This ought to be good." The bailiff's eyebrows shot up. The stenographer's fingers paused over her keys. Hargrove leaned back, folding his arms. "You sure about that, son? This isn't a game." "I'm sure," Marcus said, his tone unshaken. He stepped forward, hands still casual in his pockets, and the room went dead silent. The air crackled with something new, uncertainty. Langston shuffled his papers, his confidence unshaken but his eyes narrowing. He thought he'd won already. He hadn't seen Marcus's play yet. Marcus turned to Officer Kendrick, his voice calm but piercing. "You said you saw me driving. What time was that?" Kendrick hesitated, then squared his shoulders. "Around 11:45 p.m.? Marcus nodded slowly. "And you chased me yourself? From the car to the alley?" "That's right," Kendrick said, his jaw tight. Marcus tilted his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Interesting." He glanced at Hargrove. "Your Honor, I'd like to request Officer Kendrick's GPS logs from that night. If he saw me driving, his patrol car should have been right behind me. Let's check." Langston's smirk vanished. He stood quickly. "Objection, Your Honor. This is a fishing expedition. The officer's testimony stands." Hargrove frowned, studying Marcus. "On what grounds, Mr. Tate?" Marcus didn't flinch. "On the grounds that if Officer Kendrick wasn't where he says he was, his whole story falls apart." The gallery erupted in whispers. Hargrove raised a hand, silencing them. He turned to Langston. "Counselor, any issue with pulling the logs?" Langston's jaw clenched, a bead of sweat glinting on his brow. "No, Your Honor," he said, too late to hide the crack in his armor. The jury noticed. The room noticed. Marcus noticed. And he wasn't done. He pivoted to Hensley's testimony next. "The fingerprints. You found them on the wheel. Anywhere else?" Hensley blinked. No, just the wheel." Marcus nodded, his voice steady as a blade. "So, no prints on the door, the keys, the gear shift? Just one spot?" "That's correct," Hensley said, shifting uncomfortably. Marcus let that hang, turning to the jury. "Sounds selective, doesn't it?" Excuse me." Marcus let that hang, turning to the jury. Langston gripped his gavel once, a warning. "Get to your point, Mr. Tate." Marcus took a breath, his eyes locking with the judge's. "I will, Your Honor. Soon as we see those logs, and a few other things I've got coming." The crowd held its breath. Langston's certainty was slipping, and Marcus was just getting started. The Los Angeles County Courthouse felt like a pressure cooker ready to burst. Marcus Tate stood at the defendant's table, his hands finally free of his pockets, resting lightly on a thin stack of papers he'd pulled from a battered folder. The gallery held its breath, eyes darting between him, Judge Malcolm Hargrove, and Victor Langston, whose polished veneer was cracking under the weight of Marcus's quiet defiance. Hargrove adjusted his glasses, his earlier amusement replaced by a furrowed brow. "Proceed, Mr. Tate," he said, his voice tight. "You've got the floor." Marcus nodded, stepping forward with a calm that belied the storm he was about to unleash. He turned to the jury first, his gaze steady, voice clear and deliberate. Ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution wants you to believe I stole that Audi. They've got fingerprints, a chase, and an officer's word. Sounds convincing, right? He paused, letting the question linger. But let's look closer, because the truth doesn't hide in loud accusations. It lives in the details. Langston shifted in his seat, his fingers tapping nervously on his notes. Marcus picked up a sheet from his stack and held it up. Your Honor, I'd like to submit the GPS logs from Officer Daniel Kendrick's patrol car, delivered to the court this morning. A murmur swept the room. Hargrove raised an eyebrow. Go on. Marcus handed the paper to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. These logs show Officer Kendrick was at a diner on Wilshire Boulevard at 11:45 p.m., not chasing me downtown. He didn't see me in that car. He couldn't have. The gallery gasped. Langston shot to his feet. Objection, Your Honor, this is unverified. It's from your own police department, Marcus cut in, his tone sharp but even. Signed by the dispatcher. Check the timestamp. Hargrove scanned the document, his lips pressing into a thin line. He handed it back to the bailiff. Overruled. Sit down, counselor. Langston sank into his chair, his face flushing red. The jury exchanged glances, doubt creeping into their expressions. Marcus didn't let up. He turned back to them, his voice rising just enough to pull them in. If Officer Kendrick lied about seeing me, what else isn't true? Let's talk about those fingerprints. He paced a step, hands gesturing like he was unraveling a knot. They found my prints on the steering wheel. One spot. Nowhere else. No door handle, no keys, just the wheel. He stopped, facing the jury dead on. Ever touch something that isn't yours? A friend's phone? A store display? Does that make you a thief? A juror in the front row shifted, her brow creasing. Marcus pressed on. That Audi was parked outside a 7-Eleven on Figueroa Street hours before it was stolen. I was there with friends, buying snacks. I leaned on the car, opened the door. Unlocked, by the way. Dumb move? Sure. Criminal? No. The room buzzed. Hargrove tapped his gavel lightly. Order! His eyes narrowed at Marcus. You're saying you touched it but didn't take it? Yes, Your Honor, Marcus said, meeting his gaze. And I've got proof. He pulled another paper from his stack, his voice steady as steel. This is a security camera still from the 7-Eleven. Time-stamped 9:32 p.m. Shows me leaning on the Audi with my friends. Car's still there when we leave. He handed it to the bailiff. Check the footage if you want. I didn't drive off. Langston stood again, his voice tight. Your Honor, this is irrelevant. The car was stolen. Later. Then where's your driver? Marcus snapped, turning on him. If I didn't take it, who did? The prosecutor faltered, his mouth opening, then closing. Marcus didn't wait. He pulled out his ace, holding up a final document with a slow, deliberate motion. Your Honor, I'd like to enter a statement from Raymond Whitaker, the Audi's owner. Filed with police the night of the theft, but somehow, it never made it to this trial. The courtroom went still, the air electric. Hargrove leaned forward. The owner. What's this about? Mr. Tate. Marcus read aloud, his voice cutting through the silence. I left my car running at the gas station. Some kid jumped in and took off. But it wasn't the guy you arrested. I saw him. White kid, short, maybe 16. A collective inhale swept the room. Marcus held the paper high. That's from the original report, signed by Mr. Whitaker. Why didn't we hear it, Mr. Langston? Langston's face went pale. He scrambled to his feet. Your Honor, this is a misrepresentation. The defendant was found near the scene blocks away, Marcus corrected, his voice rising now, sharp and unrelenting. Walking home after the 7-Eleven. No car, no chase, just me, caught in a net because I was black and close enough. He turned to the jury, his eyes blazing. They didn't catch the thief. They caught a scapegoat. And they hoped you wouldn't notice. The gallery erupted, whispers turning to shouts. Hargrove banged his gavel hard. Enough! Order in this court. He glared at Marcus, then Langston. Counselor, you knew about this statement? Langston stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. It wasn't deemed credible, Your Honor. Not credible, Marcus interjected, his tone icy, or inconvenient. He stepped closer to the jury box, his voice dropping, intimate, raw. I didn't run from police. I didn't resist. I was arrested because Officer Kendrick needed a collar and Mr. Langston needed a win. But this isn't about me, it's about a system that picks winners before the trial starts. A juror wiped her eyes. Another clenched his fists. The room trembled with the weight of Marcus's words. Hargrove rubbed his temple, his earlier swagger gone. Mr. Tate, you've made your point. Anything else? Marcus took a slow breath, his calm returning like a tide pulling back. Just one thing, Your Honor. I move to dismiss this case. The evidence doesn't hold. The truth does. Langston lunged up, desperate. Your Honor, the fingerprints mean nothing without context, Marcus shot back. You got no witness, no timeline, no case. He faced Hargrove, unflinching. Dismiss it, now. The judge stared at him, the room hanging on a razor's edge. Langston's hands shook as he gripped his table. The jury watched, wide-eyed, as Hargrove leaned back, exhaling hard. His gavel hovered, the silence deafening. Then, with a crack that echoed like thunder, he brought it down. Case dismissed. Chaos broke loose. Half the gallery cheered, half sat stunned. Reporters scribbled furiously. Marcus didn't move, his shoulders easing as the weight lifted. Langston slumped, defeated, his papers scattering. Hargrove removed his glasses, rubbing his face, his expression unreadable. The climax had landed not with a roar, but with a truth too loud to ignore. The Los Angeles County Courthouse erupted as Judge Malcolm Hargrove's gavel struck the bench, the sound reverberating like a gunshot. Case dismissed, he repeated, his voice firm but tinged with something heavy. Resignation, maybe awe? The gallery split in two. Half leaped to their feet, cheering, while the other half sat frozen, mouths agape. Reporters scrambled, pens flying across notepads, their cameras already trained on Marcus Tate. He stood still at the defendant's table, his hands resting on his now empty folder, his face unreadable. The storm he'd unleashed settled around him. But he didn't bask in it. Not yet. Victor Langston slumped in his chair, his crisp suit wrinkled, his tie askew. Papers spilled across his table. Useless now, a testament to a case that had crumbled under Marcus's relentless truth. He stared at the floor, avoiding the jury's eyes, avoiding Hargrove's. The prosecutor's polished confidence was gone, replaced by a hollow silence. The bailiff shifted awkwardly, unsure where to look. Even Ellen Carver, the public defender, sat wide-eyed, her notes untouched, as if she'd just witnessed a miracle. Hargrove cleared his throat, adjusting his robe. He peered down at Marcus over his glasses, his earlier smirk nowhere to be found. Mr. Tate, he said, his tone softer, almost curious. Marcus looked up, meeting his gaze. The judge hesitated, then spoke. That was unexpected. You've got a mind for this. Don't waste it. Marcus nodded once, a faint twitch of his lips hinting at a smile. I don't plan to, Your Honor. The words carried weight, a promise, not a boast. Hargrove held his stare for a long moment, then leaned back, exhaling. Something had shifted in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or the sting of being outplayed by a 19-year-old he'd underestimated. The courtroom doors swung open as spectators spilled out, their voices a chaotic hum. Marcus gathered his papers, tucking them under his arm, and turned to leave. The jury filed out, some casting glances his way, admiration from a few, disbelief from others. A woman in the back row whispered to her neighbor, "That boy just turned the whole system upside down." Huh! Outside, the steps of the courthouse buzzed with life. Reporters swarmed, microphones thrusting forward. "Marcus, did you expect this win?" one shouted. "What's next?" another pressed. He pulled his hoodie up, shielding his face, and kept walking. This wasn't about fame. It never had been. At the bottom of the steps, Lorraine Tate waited, her arms crossed, her paralegal's sharp eyes scanning her son. She didn't move as he approached, her expression a mix of relief and exasperation. "You scared me senseless, Marcus," she said, her voice low, soulful. "Taking on a courtroom like that?" He scratched the back of his head, a sheepish grin breaking through. "Had to, Ma. Couldn't let them win." She studied him, then stepped forward, pulling him into a fierce hug. "Stubborn as ever," she murmured, her voice cracking just enough to betray her pride. The cameras flashed, but Marcus didn't care. He hugged her back, the weight of the day melting into that embrace. Across the street, Hargrove stood by his car, watching. His posture sagged, the arrogance stripped away. He'd expected routine. Instead, he'd gotten Marcus Tate, a name he wouldn't forget. The system had blinked, and for once, justice had won. The Los Angeles sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the courthouse steps as Marcus Tate and his mother, Lorraine Tate, walked away from the chaos. The reporters' shouts faded behind them, swallowed by the hum of the city. Marcus adjusted his hoodie, his step steady, purposeful. He'd won. Case dismissed, name cleared, but the fire in his chest didn't flicker out. It burned brighter. This wasn't the end. It was a beginning. Lorraine glanced at him, her voice soft but firm. "You know what this means, don't you?" She didn't wait for an answer. "You've got a gift, Marcus. Not just smarts. Heart. Use it." Her words hung in the air, heavy with years of her own battles as a paralegal, watching a system chew up lives and spit them out. Marcus nodded, his jaw tight. He'd seen it too. Today wasn't just about him. Inside, Judge Malcolm Hargrove sat alone in his chambers, the case file still open on his desk. He traced a finger over Marcus's name, his mind replaying the day. He'd misjudged the boy, assumed guilt, rushed to close the book. Now doubt gnawed at him. How many others had he sentenced without looking deeper? He shut the file, his reflection staring back from the polished wood. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of his robe. Marcus stopped at a crosswalk, gazing at the skyline. His mind churned with memories. Nights poring over law books while his friends chased games. Lorraine's stories of crooked deals and lazy attorneys. He'd beaten Victor Langston and Hargrove at their own game, but the victory tasted bittersweet. Because it wasn't enough. One dismissed case didn't fix a machine built to break people like him. Black, young, presumed guilty before the gavel fell. He turned to Lorraine, his voice low, resolute. "I'm going to law school, Ma. Not just for me, for the ones who can't fight back." Her eyes glistened, a proud smile breaking through. "Good," she said simply. "Make them listen." The truth settled in his bones. This wasn't about one courtroom, one judge, one sloppy prosecutor. It was about a system that thrived on shortcuts, on bias masquerading as justice. How many sat in cells right now, their voices unheard, their stories buried? Marcus clenched his fists. He'd seen the cracks today. He'd widen them tomorrow. Across town, the news spread. Social media lit up, clips of Marcus's defense, hashtags calling him a prodigy, a hero. But he didn't check his phone. He didn't need the noise. He needed the work ahead, the late nights, the bar exam. The day he'd stand in a courtroom again, not as a defendant, but as the attorney tearing down walls. This story isn't just his, it's ours. Think about it. How many Marcus Tates are out there, fighting battles they shouldn't have to? How many judges like Hargrove miss the truth? How many prosecutors like Langston win because no one calls their bluff? The justice system runs on laws, sure, but it's powered by people. So here's the call. Share this, talk about it, hit that like button if it moves you, subscribe if you want more stories that cut deep. Because change doesn't come from silence, it comes from noise, from questions, from kids like Marcus who refuse to bow. Next time it might not be him, it might be your brother, your friend, your neighbor. The system won't fix itself, but we can. Let's make it blink again.